even baseball, there's so much turnover every year, right? So many teams go worst to first. You think a team's going to be good, and then they go from 12 wins to 7 wins, or vice versa. But I think for Burrow in that division, where you play the Ravens, who we know are going to be good, the Steelers won 8 games with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. They have an excellent defense, so that's going to be tough. So do you play them early? Do you play them late? When do they, stack up? And even the Browns, I mean, they've been a dumpster fire for years, but they do have a lot of talent. I do think it matters a little bit for a young quarterback where he kind of starts out. Does he get to start out a couple games at home? Is it on the road? Especially this year, Colin. Think about it. The OTAs are not happening. I know they're doing virtual meetings 2 hours a day, 4 days a week or whatever, but that is just not the same. I mean, listen, OTAs are not Bear Bryant double days, but there is a lot of mental learning. And for a quarterback, taking in a new offense, learning some new teammates, getting some timing down with guys he's never played with is really important, and that's just simply not going to take place over this, the next couple months.
OBJ said, this is going to be my time and my season. And I look at OBJ and I think, okay, Cleveland acquired Austin Hooper. Jarvis Landry's a volume guy. Kevin Stefanski doesn't throw the ball a ton. Now, some of that may be the directive of Mike Zimmer, but Kirk Cousins was only 24th in pass attempts. So I look at OBJ and I think to myself, listen, if happiness is tied to expectations, if he had 70 catches, I would actually be a little surprised, right?
I would tend to agree. It'll be hard for him to have the production from those first couple years with the Giants when he was clearly their go-to guy and, head and shoulders above the rest. In this offense, one thing with Stefanski last year in Minnesota, when Dalvin Cook was healthy and on the field, they slammed it down your throat.
Yes.
And this team has multiple running backs. But Cousins did have some big moments throughout the year when Diggs had his mind right and was playing. He hit him deep several times. So I think they use the deep threat in this zone, offense. Kyle Shanahan does. McVay has. Kyle did when he was in Atlanta. When you have a speed guy and you're running it, you can hit some big shots. But the volume of targets, to me, probably will not be there. Because like you said, the tight ends, they love the tight ends in this offense. And Jarvis Landry is just a consistent guy, assuming he's healthy, when the season starts, just over the middle. It's an easy target for a quarterback. Let's face it, Colin, coming off a terrible year and just needs to kind of get the train back on the tracks.
John Middlekauff is joining us, former scout, done talk show stuff. He's a part of the Herd Podcast Network. He was a scout for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts for the Eagles goes second round, little high, but I get it. If and I think he'll be fine over time. If there was a first round, we know this, that we just had half the first round, didn't get their fifth-year option picked up. There's going to be a lot of busts in the first round. Are there one or two first-round guys that you just don't know if they fit? Because to me, fit is so crucial in this league. Like Isaiah Simmons, that could be a bust because I'm not sure what the fit is, right?
Colin, he's just not a plug-and-play player. I get the media, thought he's the next, I don't know, Lawrence Taylor meets Ed Reed, but he's a guy that all my buddies in the NFL just said when you really studied him, you better have Todd Bowles or Bill Belichick moving him around. His defensive coordinator at Clemson makes over $2 million, the highest-paid coordinator in the country. Why? Because he's elite, Brett Venables. Well, Vance Joseph, the last 3 years, has led atrocious defenses. For 2 years when he was the head coach in Denver, unlike when Wade Phillips was running it, the defense fell off and was bad. Last year in Arizona, it was really, really bad. Now, Steve Keim historically has hit on a lot of, versatile players like this. Deion Buchanan, the Honey Badger. They have had success with that type player. But they had Todd Bowles moving those guys around. I don't see it with Vance Joseph, and it's not like Cliff Kingsbury can add much, Colin. He's not a defensive guy. He's an offensive guy only, and historically his defense has been terrible. So who's helping Isaiah Simmons to be put in the right position in Arizona? I'm not disputing his physical attributes because they're special, right? He's tall, he can run, he can move all over the place. But those guys sometimes need the right coordinator. This is a coaching league. We've seen a lot of talented players go to the wrong scheme or the wrong team and not play well. I got that one a little red flag for sure.
Yeah, I've said with Joe Burrow yesterday, Mel Kiper said he and Trevor Lawrence, if they came out in the same class, you'd take Joe Burrow slam dunk. And I think, we're getting to the point now where the hype, the mythology of Joe Burrow's, he could not beat out J.T. Barrett. or Dwayne Haskins. Trevor Lawrence came in as a kid, and essentially they sat the Clemson quarterback who was 12-2. Just sat him. Just said, this kid's better. When I look at Trevor Lawrence and I talk to my guys in the NFL, they're like, oh, this is like Andrew Luck stuff. He's got to have a little more command at the line of scrimmage, but it looks like no miss. Are we overhyping Burrow now? Like, is it becoming, to me, it feels like pump the brakes on Burrow.
Well, I think he just had such a historic year at just a massive program I think I read a stat, the SEC West had more first-round picks than I think the ACC and the Big Ten combined.
Wow.
So what he did in that conference and on that side of the conference against the best talent was remarkable. And then from really once the SEC championship in the 2 playoff games. But we act like Trevor Lawrence hasn't played big boy football. He's also played in 4 playoff games. Now, the game against LSU, he was atrocious. But, Michael Jordan had bad games, right? I mean, Mickey Mantle struck out. I'm not saying he's going to be those guys as a football player, but you can have bad games. He's going to have 3 years starting when it's all said and done. I think if Trevor Lawrence would have been in this draft, for example, the Bengals, I know you've talked about this, are such a conservative organization. It would still be easy to take Joe Burrow. But I think if you gave a lot of the younger general managers, the more aggressive teams, they would have no problem, and I mean none, taking Trevor Lawrence number 1. I still think he is in line to be the top pick, but we see some things change. I thought Sam Darnold was a lock to go 1, and Baker Mayfield ends up going over him. We'll see how Justin Fields comes out. But I say at worst case scenario, coming into this season, he's a top 2 pick, and I would still lean he'll be the number 1 pick when the draft comes around next year.
Minute left, little more maybe. Dak Prescott, what's he supposed to make of the Andy Dalton move? What do you make of it?
Well, where's Dak Prescott's leverage? Who is Jerry Jones bidding against? We see Jameis Winston, Cam Newton. These guys, there's nowhere for them to go. Where is if he rescinded the franchise tag? Where's he getting $35+ million? And Andy Dalton had an awful year last year, but he's had a lot of success when he was on really good teams. I like Dak Prescott. I do, and I would love him for $25 million. I have a hard time paying him $35 million when he's already proven he can't really carry the franchise. This team's so good. When you pay a guy that much money, the Rams are a good example. You have to get rid of guys at next year, the following year.
Yep.
I think they're going through a lot of scenarios. I don't think this sets in stone Dak Prescott's end with the Cowboys. I do think it gives them options because they would not have been this aggressive just randomly. I can't see it.
Hope you're still social distancing. Up in the Bay Area, could you go to the beach yet or anything?
Yeah, I was. I walked by the beach this weekend in Santa Cruz, and they were handing out $1,000 tickets if your feet hit the sand. So I stayed back,
Wow.
But you were allowed to surf. So if you're in the water, you were good. You walked on the beach, $1,000. There's not much rhyme or reason to what's going on around here, so you just kind of keep your head on a swivel and keep moving.
So how do you get to the water? Don't you have to walk on the beach to get to the water?
Well, no, it was coming down a hill at a house, so I walked down, keeping our distance, and then we just kind of got close and then saw some police working on four-wheelers and, didn't want to get the $1,000 ticket for standing on the beach. Unless you ran straight to the water, you'd be okay. So.
Okay, John Middlekauff, good talking to you.
See you, Colin.
Yeah, by the way, I was in Ventura County, north of Los Angeles County, this weekend, and the beaches I saw surfers all over the place. And then I was down in Newport a couple of weeks ago, Orange County, south of L.A. County, and there was people everywhere. L.A. County restricted beaches, but we have a higher